Whiskey people, it's that time again. I was joined by Jake Davenport, bartender, mixologist living right here in Las Vegas. He's a certified sommelier, certified Cicerone. So I thought bringing him on to join me for a crash course in tasting would be fun and definitely appropriate. I have Jake blind taste a wine using the Court of Master Sommeliers deductive grid to give everyone listening a glimpse of what it's required to pass the Court of Master Sommeliers wine certification. We talk about how wine study has translated to tasting spirits and much, much more. It was a fun episode. Jake's a great guy. I want to send a shout out to John Spackman, J5 Bourbons on Instagram for the support and reaching out to me. Also Kevin Mooney from Tigard, Oregon. We go way back, and I appreciate your support. Love you, man. As always, thank you to everyone listening, and I hope you are all enjoying the show as much as I have making it so far. I can't wait to do some more really fun things in the future. Without further ado, let's get into it.
The Whiskey Talkin' Podcast.
All right, welcome everybody to the Whiskey Talkin' Podcast. Today we have Jake Davenport. Welcome.
Hello.
And the new kind of thing that we're doing is letting people pick their intro music. So here we go. How's this?
Good.
So Jake is a bartender, mixologist, living in Las Vegas. He has many certifications. You're a certified sommelier?
Yes.
Certified Cicerone?
Yes.
What else?
Well, I got the other minor stuff, the CRT tequila stuff, and did that Southern class thing, give you a little title for that.
Yeah. No, it's all important. It's not those little things. It's important stuff.
Yeah.
So what about first? I kind of have all the guests. Tell kind of what led them to Vegas and what led you to bartending.
Oh, that's crazy. That goes way back. You know, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a bartender when I was like a little kid. My grandpa would take me to a certain bar in the city sometimes, and just seeing the reaction with all those people and stuff was pretty interesting.
So there's a social aspect of it?
Yeah, for sure. I just thought it was cool that people hung out and had fun just hanging out.
Yeah.
And then, I got older, and we'd hang out at as kids at my grandma's, and she had a kitchenette, and we'd play bartender with sodas and stuff, with
nice.
Juices and that was fun. And then I got into high school, and I found out that it was actually a job. You have to go visit the counselor in for your freshman year or whatever, and they're pick a career, and they had this big list, and I saw it on there. I was like, holy crap.
You can get paid for that?
Yeah, and they're like, okay, just do that. So I was like, and then what do you want to do for school? And I was like, 4 years of college, and then I'll get into bartending,
It happens more often than not.
Right.
Yeah.
So sophomore year, I go back in, and they're like, yeah, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I still want to be a bartender, but let's do 2 years of college. Mm-hmm. And then, junior year is vocational school and bartending. And then senior year comes around, and it's like, I'm leaving. I will do the bartending, but there's no more of this, Ironically, I go back and do all the extra school with the certifications. That's the funny thing, is that it went in a different direction than I anticipated.
Right. But that's kind of your niche too, is you really enjoy the education. That's where we met. If the story of how I met Jake was, I was taking through the Culinary Union. I was taking the certified or their sommelier course, but it was the second course. The first one was certified wine server, so super basic wine certification. So this was the second class. First day, I feel pretty good about passing wine. My wine server class, sitting in class, and in late walks Jake into the class. I think we were all sitting, and Jack, who has passed away now, super awesome teacher, one of the most cerebral teachers I've ever had, coming from just
yeah, for sure.
100%. Like
Yeah.
his style, a lot of people might not have liked his style, but I love like the dry humor mixed with like crazy like way of thinking that he, anyway, tangent.
No, it is awesome.
Yeah.
For sure.
So Jake comes in and he's about to sit down and Jack, the teacher, goes, well, did you take the wine server? And I think you're like, no. And he's like, well, you got to pass like a test to get in here. And I remember you just look at him and you're like, yeah, that's cool. Just give it to me. I'll pass it. And so he gives you the test. You go in the next room. It's like 15 minutes or whatever. You come back in, pass the test. So I'm like, who is this cocky son of a bitch walking in? So you had known, some wine knowledge before that.
Right. I'd read quite a few books. And
What got you into wine initially?
my first bartending job was fine dining,
Wow, first, right off the bat.
right into it,
It's like sink or swim.
It was, and the place hadn't opened, so I got to open this fine dining restaurant in downtown Fort Myers, Florida, and it was jazz.
So that's where you were born?
No, Kansas.
Kansas, but okay. You've
Yeah,
been
I
a few
went there
places.
right after high school, pretty much.
Okay,
Right
on.
and just hit it as soon as I was 20. That's when I started that, and I started as a barback, of course, because they wouldn't let anyone in. Well, I did the National Bartenders School too before this. Let's just make that clear. The
Okay.
2 weeks course with the food coloring bottles. and stuff.
to learn how to do the all the
Everything.
Midori sours.
Oh yeah, we got that. But I went forward.
We
with
got
that. That's another certification. Went forward.
Right.
I actually have that paper still.
Good.
Just so we're clear.
You know what? As much as people knock, like, out here, like, there's a couple bartending schools. Do you need it? Absolutely not. Is it a waste of money? That's debatable. I mean, if you know nothing, you're going to come out of there with a pretty good amount of knowledge. Like, it's a little bit outdated, I'll say, most schools for craft bartending. I'll give them that. But don't totally knock it. What I think people's misconceptions are is I'll go to this bartending school and I get a job as a bartender.
Right.
No, because if I'm a hiring manager, which I've been in that position, if you have that, great. But if you're not sociable, if you can't handle, the interview well, if I don't get the sense that you're beyond just the drinks, I'm not going to hire you. So there's more. But anyway, side tangent with bartending schools. They get a lot of shit, but I think it's a good foundation if you just want to like do anything to break in.
Sure, it worked for me.
Yeah.
$500 and
Yeah, but you also have a pretty you have a good personality for bartending. I think you have this like duality to you of like, obviously we'll get into it later, but like this punk rock side, this like rebellious side, and then you almost like reverse Clark Kent it, where you like get into the telephone booth to change into the suit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
So I think, I don't know. That's how I perceive it. So you have this like great personality to like, and you're smart. So you're fit for a bartender. You have like the studious side, but you have like the, one of the competitions we were in, you took off your shirt and you had like not rhinestone, spiked,
Chain suspenders.
chain suspenders. So I'm like,
chain.
so for those of you listening, that's Jake in a nutshell.
Right.
But anyway, kind of your story to Vegas. Continue.
Oh yeah, so like that's where I started with that place, and it was bar backing at first. That lasted a few weeks, some people didn't make it, got right in, and then the program they had started to kind of come apart at the threads because the general manager and one of the owners and some affair stuff might have happened.
It happens.
Yeah, so like a lot of people left at once, which I did not. So it kind of like I got a lot more responsibilities real fast. I'm sure there's been a lot of people in programs like that. And one of them that really fell my way was wine, which at first I wasn't, I wanted to do the cocktail stuff. And
Yeah.
especially, when you first start, it's always the classics. You're just like, oh, let's do classic cocktails. It's so much fun and everything. Mm-hmm. I got made fun of a lot for that. It was 2002.
Yeah, that was definitely before people were making like classics everywhere.
Right.
For sure. That was definitely before.
It was funny because when it started to come back strong, I was almost like, kind of doing this now.
Yeah.
Like, I would, it's cool and all.
But to circle back around
it's
is
cool.
Sure.
Yeah, But the wine thing came in hard, and I started reading books, and the more books I read, the more I found out that there was stuff to learn, not just about wine, but people, culture, places, history, religion, like all these things that are tied to it that you just, geography, geology, I mean, weather patterns, climate, everything. I mean, temperature, chemistry, it's all jammed into that.
It's
one
all intertwined.
study. Yeah.
And it just makes learning more fun and more substantial. Like, yes, you can be learning about French wine, but all of a sudden, just because it has to happen, you're learning about history and why grapes were grown there and why they stopped growing there. And like, it all comes back to whether it be like government stuff, wars, phylloxera, religion is huge.
Big time.
So it's like you have no choice if you're going to learn wine or spirits than to learn about history.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
And all the silly little romance stories they have,
Yeah. And mixed in with the marketing.
Sure.
Which marketing goes back a long ways.
Oh, yeah.
So you did that. That was kind of your base. That was kind of your classic cocktail bartending start into wine knowledge. And then why Vegas?
Oh, I like this city a lot. Just for the longest time, I'd visited here a few times before I moved here and planned on continue doing it. At the time I was living in Florida, it was kind of like a weird spot in the life. I was married and such with all this other nonsense going on. So it was hard to like focus on a goal that was based on my own desires. So once I, took a while, but I managed to get it in and dial it in right. And I finally got here. It was always somewhat of a plan. Just never executed. So when it did get executed, I was like, sweet, made it. Awesome. We're good.
It just took a little bit longer than you initially.
Absolutely. A lot of speed bumps, but that was always part of the goal.
Cool.
Even as a young child again, I still like this place. I like the whole gambling stuff, Yeah. I even remember getting like the Caesar's Palace Nintendo game. And I just played the hell out of that stuff because I thought it was fun and just like interesting,
Like speaking on like the city and moving here, how do you feel about, there is that side, the gambling, you work on the strip, but how do you feel about what people may not realize about what the community aspect is? In particular, like the bartending community is pretty tight here. And I mean, was that kind of a shock to you, or did that take a while to like get a sense of community living in Vegas? Because for me, it did. It took me and my wife a while to where we're like, oh, there's more to Vegas than, because it can be a cold city. It's very transient. People move in and out. But I mean, what's your take on the community aspect?
That pretty much got into it pretty good. I mean, as fast as you could acclimate to a social environment was not knowing anyone. I had no pre-existing friends. So you got to start from absolute zero. You make one friend. He's got a friend. You meet some of them, maybe not so much. And you just keep going forward with this and that. Until, I had a large group of friends before I got into the bartending group. But even that, I mean, like, with the, like you being my first USBG friend, getting me to join that one day after the wine class and everything. And after that, I felt like that even kind of transpired quick. Because right after that, it was the Bacardi, what was that, Flair thing we did?
Oh, it was the first, that was like the first real competition I've ever done. We did my very first cocktail competition was with Jake. And that was, we did a Moscow Mule variation, and we called it the Cold Whore.
Yes.
Yeah, it's still, and I thought that was so clever. I still think it's clever.
It is,
I don't give a shit.
But
it was like a cinnamon apple, and remember we had like a tub full of we made like an apple like paste.
Oh, yeah.
And then we had a tub full of limes because we had to juice our own. Oh, it was a nightmare. But yeah, it was fun. But yeah, that led to Bacardi. That was the Coughlin's Law based off the movie Cocktail.
Right.
Where we had to take all these different elements of bartending, a little bit of flair. And this was crazy. This cocktail competition, I have it up on YouTube. And I I knew that was an important competition for me in particular. One, it was like my first one, but I took it pretty seriously, and I rewrote like the speech from Cocktail to like integrate like classic cocktails instead of the Ding-a-ling and all these other ones. But the judges that day were Nectalia Mendoza, owner of Herbs and Rye, Marina Mercer, property mixologist of Cosmo, Francesco Lafranconi. Who else was there? Paul Wynn. So we had these flair guys, and we had these
was Andrew there?
Pollard? Yeah. No, not on that one. Okay. No, but Chris Hopkins was there.
Right. He was proctoring it, right?
Sam Stolich. So it was like all these like giants of the industry, and I didn't really grasp, like, I probably would have been more nervous. But I remember when I started my speech, I got hung up, and Nectali's like, "You forgot it, didn't you?"
Yeah.
And like, I'm in the middle of this thing, so
he's trying to tell you to choke.
which is good. You need that. And as
Absolutely.
a bartender, man, there's nothing now. I mean, I say that, but there's always something. But like I've seen so much working at all these different bars in Vegas and like heard so many stories and been interrupted in so many different ways and talked to in so many different ways that I don't know if there's something that could like shake me now.
Right.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
You know, I've had drinks thrown and people trying to spit on me, and it's the life of bartending where it's like, but that translates too. Like I'll tell my wife, like we'll go somewhere and like people will be like, throw something at me and it just doesn't rattle me as much now.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's where you got into USBG. I was just into the USBG. I think that happened. I told you I went. Do you remember what seminar I told you I went to? And then
It was an Italian wine cordial tasting. I was like, I want to go to Italian wine cordial tasting. How do you get it in this thing? And you're like, just go home and join this thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I did. It's like, that was that.
Yeah, so people listening that don't really know, it's the United States Bartenders Guild. There's a lot of chapters all over the country. Obviously, we're in the local Las Vegas chapter, but if you're a bartender or thinking about bartending or you just love cocktails, like you can be an enthusiast too. You don't have to be a bartender, but check it out. It's usbg.org. A lot of times in this podcast, like when I re-listen to them, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't skip over so many things that I think are obvious to us in our group.
Sure.
So, so you did that, kind of got into the more education side. Out of all your certifications, like for one, why do you do it? And secondly, how have they benefited you?
Well, first I do it just pretty much because I can.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun.
But where's that quest for learning come from? Has it just always been there since you were a kid? Or do you find that it makes you more confident in your job? Or, I mean, everyone has their reasons for bumping up their education.
Sure. The learning is the fun part.
Okay. So it's not necessarily the benefit of the knowledge. It's the process of learning.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
that's definitely not it for everyone. Some people are just grinding in books to get a certification.
No,
for you, it's the journey.
Yeah, not the destination.
Right.
But the destination, you might as well have a moniker to like check off this. And
absolutely
along the way, because I could go to a job interview later too and just say I did all that, or just be like, oh yeah, here's the checklist.
Sure.
Whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, you never know when you're going to need that knowledge for sure. Out of all the certifications, what was your favorite to acquire?
Oh, definitely the Cicerone so far. I mean, that's just because that is a hard test. I mean, the difficulty.
I think it's underratedly hard too. Like in the industry, people get that it's insanely hard, but from the outside looking in, you're like, beer certification, how hard is that?
I think that's why so many people fail.
Yeah, because they underprepare.
For sure.
Underestimate, yeah.
But also, I wasn't that involved with the beer community here. After doing the wine course, I met some wine people here and there in the USBG. I mean, all the cocktail and stuff. It's fun, but there's a big presence of a huge beer community in Las Vegas.
Sure.
Way bigger than I thought.
And it's growing exponentially, especially over the last 3 or 4 years.
For sure.
Huge.
And the friends I made through that course, because I took the course, the 3-month course at Southern Wine again, which was really awesome. Sam's good teacher.
Sam Merritt.
Yeah, that was fun.
He's a fun dude.
It was awesome time. And all the friends I made in that class, I'm still friends with a lot of them today. Yeah. And, it's just life experiences I wouldn't have got if I would have just learned the product without that extra step.
Sure. It's fun too, not only having a teacher where you're like, oh, I want to get a drink with that guy.
Yeah.
That always makes it more enjoyable. But also we'll relate this to tasting too. Sometimes when you're learning and you're around people that you really enjoy or you're in a class, you're more engaged with the product, and that translates, whether it's, your tasting knowledge for that particular seminar or whatever, it'll stick in your mind as a memory because you had so much fun doing it.
Right.
That's just common, whether memories, and our tastes are memories, right?
Right.
So, I mean, let's kind of get into, real briefly, what is tasting. We'll go over kind of what your process is for doing a blind taste. We're going to have you run through. Jake didn't know I was going to do this today, but I wrapped up a wine bottle in the classic tin foil, and we're going to have him do a blind wine tasting using the Court of Master Sommeliers tasting grid, deduction grid, I think they call it. I did level 1, but it's been so long that I couldn't even touch to go do a rundown with the grid right now. But we'll kind of have him go through that, and then we can relate that to whiskey and what you can pull from that, wine study to what helps you tasting spirits and in particular whiskey. We have 2 whiskeys today that we'll try. We have a High West, the Midwinter's Night Dram, and the Yippee-Ki-Yay. So 2 rye whiskeys that are finished in wine barrels of some sort. So we'll get into that later. But so we're talking about taste. So gustation, right, is the act of tasting, and olfaction is the taste of smelling. So shout out to Mike Doyle. I know he's going to listen to this, but he just did an amazing blind tasting seminar with the USBG with the help of Katie Cruz and Jake sitting next to me, you're part of the educational council of USBG, correct?
Correct.
But tell a little bit about the USBG Educational Council and what you've been up to with that, just real briefly, because I think it's interesting.
We do have a large chapter with a lot of people, and it was an idea by the original council to start some subcommittees just to see what kind of stuff we could do with that. And when they approached me and asked if I'd like to do it, it would be basically just a few things a year, of usually non-sponsored stuff, where it's pure education. So it's more to the source to help out other people because, learning sometimes can be easily influenced by
money.
Whoever wants you to learn.
The transparency's there. I mean, Kristen, who was the president before Raul, she was very transparent. It's brands give the USBG money to put on seminars. With that money, the council decides where to disperse it. And part of what the current council is doing, and we also did the educational workshops when I was on council, the one before this, was they're using some of that money to do an unsponsored event where it's basically, cycling it back into the system to give kind of a unbiased educational experience.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, that's much better worded.
No, but it's, I mean, for people listening, it's kind of tough. I mean, you're like, oh, why is it not always fair or whatever? I mean, not to say it's fair, but, let's say brand X, wants to get their point across about and gets, the bartenders tasting their product. They're not going to bring in competitors' products. Usually, sometimes they do, which is, I love it when they do that because they're like, listen, we'll taste them all blind and I'll tell you that this is brand X and we're Y. Which one do you like better? I'm not saying it's better, but you might. Oh, yeah. So I love when brands actually do that, where they're not afraid to bring in some other ones. I think
that happened once with us at the Nature Preserve.
Yeah. What was that?
It was Belvedere. And the peach, and you blinded that Ciroc, and you're like, Ciroc!
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. Yeah, Ciroc's pretty in your face. I mean, that's one I hopefully will always get. But so how much of our perception of taste is actually what we're smelling? Google says 80%, and the internet's never wrong. As you know, the internet's actually never wrong. I actually looked that fact up on the internet.
Oh, nice.
So that's why I believe it.
Right.
So
that makes
80% of the time it works 100% of the time.
Absolutely.
So I mean, for those people, kind of listening, and that's kind of that when you're sick, obviously you don't taste as well, right?
Right.
But we kind of forget how much of our perception of taste is based on our olfaction system, right?
Right.
Olfactory system.
Here's the thing about that stat, though, is that might be true in a relative sense of just generalized sensory evaluation. But when you're doing the stuff we do, that isn't exactly like a number I would use for accuracy, because a lot of stuff isn't into consideration in that stat, like tactical sensations of the mouth, actual feeling, viscosity. These are the kind of things that really come down to it, are the discerning factors in being able to blind something.
Right.
So if you shoot out those numbers like that, it just falls against a like inconclusive, nothing.
Right. Sure. I mean, whether the number is that or, but it's heavily weighed on, plug your nose and try something, unplug your nose, right?
Sure, yeah.
It goes deeper than that, but explain kind of, the idea that taste buds are everything, and kind of your take on, it's supposed to be bitter, sour, sweet, salty, and umami, right?
Right.
So, I mean, how much do you buy into that? While he's saying this, I'm going to pour the blind wine.
That, that whole thing, it works for me. You know, those are all the words we've described to experience those different things. A lot of people have gone in and made, you know, scientific research, with EKGs and stuff like that hooked up to people's brains. Pretty accurate.
Sure.
The tongue map has been kind of scientifically disproven, but it still gives a, to me,
general sense.
Yeah, a general sense. And once again, it goes to like what you feel where, because that is something, you know, like whether the tannins are under the tongue or under the lip, you know, stuff like that. These little tiny, like, subtle differences.
Yeah, it's funny. The more you get into it, and we'll talk about it, it's, you know, where tannins are hitting your mouth. I mean, that's a huge thing in wine. Kind of overlooked a little bit in whiskey. Definitely not tannic dryness and astringency. I mean, people hit on that, but type of oak that whiskey's aged in hitting your mouth differently is kind of interesting. But so kind of just hitting back to that just so that we kind of have a basis. So how do the molecules reach the olfactory system in the nasal cavity? Orthonasal is sniffing and retronasal is through the mouth. So that's why a lot of times when you're tasting, get some air in there, get some airflow, because that'll go up the back of your throat and hit the olfactory bulb, as well as, you know, what's coming in your nose will also. So there's two different paths to get to that bulb, and then you translate that. So kind of to perceive the taste.
Yeah.
You
and
kind of
that olfactory bulb is like a dime-sized piece of just super mega neurosensors, just billions
fire
of,
in
like, the sensors. And that's whenever anyone gets like a head injury and loses sense of smell or something, it's because swelling happens. It'll pinch that off just the slightest bit. You know, it's the size of a dime. Any damage to that done at all, and like you can just blast away 20 different smells forever.
Wow.
You know?
I didn't really think of that.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah. So let's get into. Let's have you run through the grid. I'm gonna kind of let you run through, and this is kind of the official way. If you're interested more in this, I think a good start would be the movie Somm.
The documentary.
The documentary, yeah. The drama-mentary. No, it's very intense, but it's a cool. You know, if you're into this, and I get this gets a little stuffy, but wine is fun too. I think people get caught up, but if you really want to see how caught up people get, watch Somm. I think it's on Netflix and Hulu and all those. Maybe.
Oh yeah, probably YouTube by now.
Yeah, right.
You know.
So I'll kind of let you get into this, and then I'll give you some proper music.
Oh, that is just fantastic.
Go ahead, Jake.
Okay, so we're just going to start off at the very top and we're going to go right down this sheet of paper. And we're going to start with clarity. So clarity means that it is clear, like not color-wise, but like clear as in what you can see through if you put something behind it. One way to always tell for sure is just hold it against paper with ink, and if you can read the ink clearly without any turbidity or anything in there, it's clear. I don't know why they put this on the test normally, because any wine they normally give you is always clear, you know?
I don't think they're doing natural wines, right? Like those.
No, I mean, it's always going to be something so super typical.
Natural wines are delicious, but yeah, I don't think they're doing a lot of cloudy.
Right.
But anyway.
It's usually like mainstream commercial examples that they give you.
Right.
You know,
so right now you're spotting faults, usually, right?
No, it's just what it looks like.
Okay.
You know, and then you go to brightness, which is how well it reflects the light. Now that's going to be different. Some wines are going to reflect light a lot better than others, especially the whites. And one thing I look for those is always like the like how you see the light in the room. Can you see like the bulb and the brightness, and it can.
And just for full disclosure, surface. This is horrible lighting in this room right now.
I was about to say that.
But sorry, but this is for demonstration. Go for it.
Okay, so yeah, I would call this just regular bright, because that's all I can get out of it. The intensity, that would just basically how much of that color is that color. Usually, with these like obscure like visual ones, I have trouble because like the standard can be so obscure.
Sure.
Sure. And I'll just kind of hedge my bets around medium, medium plus, medium minus. Like with this one, I'm definitely going to go intensity medium. Color, We're going to go with garnet. And that's always a indicator of some wines. Some wines have a very like particular color that can be expected from them. Secondary colors, that's going to be any indication of aging usually. You look around the rim for that.
So you get like a maybe a brown or
right. The rule of thumb basically goes red wines will get to a lighter color and white wines will get to a darker color.
So you're determining age by that, or I mean,
for secondary colors, I would assume that's what they would want. But that's
sure.
usually like if it's the same consistent color throughout the whole wine, it's
sure.
usually within the first few years.
Yeah.
And then once again on these, they don't give a lot of aging, usually a lot of aged wines until you get into like the really higher ends like master and advanced and those levels. You won't get anything with years on it.
Yeah.
Meniscus, that's rim variation. So when you give the wine a swirl, you look up at it, you see the legs come down. This is done in spirits as well as wine with usually indication of alcohol with wine, that is.
Spirits might be indication of sugar content.
Oh, well, yeah, there's
a
lot of other variables with
sure.
that one. But yeah, the legs on this look nice and healthy.
So the higher the ABV, how are the legs going to differ than a lower ABV wine?
Higher ABV wines, the legs will form faster and they'll be bigger. Okay. And it's only a few percent that we talk about in this difference between them, but the wine will actually, it's that few percent makes a visual difference that's very noticeable.
Right. So the more you do it, the more you'll like be able to dissect that. And for those listening, the legs are going to be the streaks as they run down the glass to meet the liquid after you swirl it.
Right.
Is that a good way to describe it?
Absolutely. And also you can watch how quick they evaporate. Not the teardrop, but the stream the teardrop comes from. The quicker that evaporates, the more alcohol as well. There's one wine I always think about when I look at that, like the drastic version is the Barolos of Italy.
Sure.
They're just like these enormous, like, it looks like it's almost fake.
Right. Yeah.
Or like,
you've been known to drink or like that style.
Yeah. Big fun reds are always good. I'm just not rich enough to do it all the time.
Yeah, I was about to say. It's a little expensive.
But this one, these legs, there's a lot of them, and they're smaller, and they take a good minute to evaporate. So
there are a lot of legs, and they're smaller. So a little people convention?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're going to go with a medium minus viscosity.
Okay.
And now we're on the nose and palate. So first thing is condition. Smell it. It's fine. That's that.
Yeah.
You could say it's clean.
So, but right, you'd say it's clean and correct.
Right.
I believe. Tell us what you'd smell if it wasn't fine, and why that would be.
There's a lot of different things you could have with wine. The cork is one thing people say a lot. That's trichloroethanol. Mm-hmm. It's a compound you don't want to get in there. If you have to double check, it's not corked.
Sure.
That's one thing people I think it's corked. You don't think it's corked. That thing, it smells
you either got
like,
punched in the face or
right.
you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. But the most common one you're going to get is one that most people won't. They'll still drink it. Is the oxidation. Because once the oxygen starts taking over.
A corked wine will smell like
mold.
Yeah.
Like mold, cork mold.
Where are you going to get wet cardboard from?
Wet cardboard.
Or is that kind of a characteristic?
Yeah, that's in there. I mean, if I smelled that, it could be a pleasant one,
Yeah.
But like wet dog, even I hate that smell. But some people get that in cabs and call it good. Same with Brett and wine. There's a lot of faults in some stuff that are good in others.
Yeah. Especially as the kind of the palate increases. You saw people liking stuff that's more bitter, or more funky, more sour. Yeah. So,
look at the sour beers right now.
Yeah,
I don't understand it. I don't care.
Right, but it's big.
It's big. It's big everywhere.
Yeah,
I love them. I'll sell it to them.
Right.
Okay. Where were we? Condition. It's fine. It's good. It's not rotten. Not rotten grapes. The intensity. Right away, I get really the ripe fruits right off the nose. So it does have some intensity. It's not like you have to look. If you have to look for anything, you're already starting at medium
minus.
Right. So we're going to go with, but it is nice. I mean, this is actually quite pleasurable. We're going to go with the Yeah, you're supposed to stick with medium.
Where would you see a higher intensity wine, like big cabs and stuff like that?
Well, the palate. I mean, it doesn't. The grape, any of them can be intense. It's just usually how it's grown.
Sure.
The more better it's grown, the more flavors it'll be at you, more
Right.
in your face. If you're like, whoa, like you said earlier, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's good. I got that right at first, and then it kind of felt like it blew off a little, but it's still nice. It's the intensity is not missing at all, but I wouldn't put it up there. That might change when I take a sip too. Who knows? That is one thing about the grid too. Even if you're verbalizing it or writing it, you can go back and scribble and reassess and stuff like that.
So I mean, the reason this is a deductive tasting is a lot of times it's what you're getting, but sometimes, and you can speak on this too, is a lot of times it's what you're not finding. By the end of it, you could be like, well, I'm here, but I didn't find that, which is very typical of what I was thinking it was.
Oh, for
and
sure.
that could lead you into something else.
Absolutely.
Pinot Grigios are like that. Sometimes it's just like, I'm not getting much of anything.
Right.
And then you're starting to drop different wines off, and then you're like, well, this is my best guess based on what I haven't gotten.
Yeah.
So, but same thing can happen in spirits as well. Sometimes you're like, oh, this was here, but this wasn't present, so I definitely know that's not what I was initially thinking.
Absolutely. It's just like any other diagnosis.
Sure.
Doctors do it every day.
Yep.
It's this, not this. Boom. This is what you have.
Yep.
But even they make mistakes.
Yes, they do. You're here. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so aroma versus bouquet. Youthful aromas versus age aromas. I'm not getting much age out of this at all. So it's more vibrant, young. Aged aromas are more... I don't want to use the word tired because that sounds bad, but relaxed.
Sure.
More, or they come in differently.
They can still be complex, but they're a little more subdued.
Right.
Sure.
But I mean, tasting aged wine is its own practice. Like you can taste all the wine in the world, and if it's all recent vintages, and then you go for aged stuff, you're gonna be done. Like you're not even. You won't get the grapes right. You won't. It's such a different ball game. The fruit. Class of fruit, citrus fruit, red fruit, fruit flavor, style. And then, okay, this is the number one thing with the grid, I feel like, especially through the Court of Masters of Sommeliers, is that you got to show your work. And when it comes to fruit and stuff like that, that's where you get the most opportunity to show your work. So you have you want to explain the condition. That is so important because everyone writes down cherry. You could put cherry on just about every wine, but what kind of cherry? There's thousands of different species. A lot of them we eat.
Fresh cherry.
And then, the condition.
Rotten cherry.
Is it rotten? Is it fresh? Is
ripe?
It dehydrated?
Yep.
Because some of these wines, if they're aged like that dehydrated smell is going to tell you stuff. It'll tell you the climate it came from. That's another big thing is that usually is an indicator.
Yeah, winemaking style. But that's a great tip that translates into whiskey is, yes, start with cherry. I got cherry.
Vanilla is the cherry of...
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's
always there.
This is a whiskey. It's vanilla, toffee, caramel. Cool. All right, we got it. But one good thing is it was talked about it's called a book called Tasting Whiskey by Lou Bryson. I'm going to do a review on just that book on the podcast soon. But they're talking about breaking through the wall of smelling, and this is like, some people get frustrated. They're like, how do you smell marzipan? How do you smell, ripe cherry or, cedar box and all this stuff? Is keep it simple. Be honest with what you're smelling. Taste everything and document it. Kind of jumping around a little bit, but the wall that you break through is eventually you'll smell something and go, oh, there's like cocoa in there.
Sure.
Or, oh, that's like that leather that I smelled that one time that, and then you start building up this database. Not to jump in the wine tasting, but or the grid. But one of the best things I learned at when I took my level 1 of the Court of Masters was one of the Master Sommeliers said his method of banking flavors and smells was he would picture a field, and everyone can have their own thing. Some people have a filing cabinet, in their head. His was, and this is what I've kind of adapted because I didn't have a method at that time. Picture a field that's wide open and there's a billboard in the middle of the field that's completely white. smell what you're smelling or taste, and the instant you get, let's say, peaches, picture the condition of that peach. Is it ripe? Is it, a white peach? Is it a yellow peach? And put it on that billboard, right? And just really think about it and lock it in. And then eventually you could be tasting like, whatever, a Sauvignon Blanc or something. And all of a sudden that billboard will pop up just because you're associating it with a picture and a memory and I think that's a good start. Whether it be, in whiskey, taste it and go, oh, I got Werther's Original. For me, I get that a lot, like that toffee. And then just build, and then you break through a wall. So, I mean, what's kind of your process for banking memories of flavor?
Oh, I got all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah, and I figured you'd have a more interesting approach.
I mean, I've done everything from, like, I bought a scent kit, like a kit of like 60 different vials where they all have their own individual scent, and I'd blind myself and have other people blind me.
What's it called?
Le Nez Divin or something like that.
Something other than nose.
Yeah. Right. The nose of wine is how it translates. Yeah. But I got that. I mean, I bought that a long time ago and would do that a lot.
Yeah, I remember you had that kit and then we did it in class and you were acing them all.
Yeah, it's because I had the numbers memorized.
I got cat piss right, which is what?
Black currant bud.
Black currant bud.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's like number 18 or something.
See? but who's counting?
Right.
So,
but that was that's how I started. And that, like you said, when you break through that wall, I remember when I broke through that wall very clearly because it was women's perfumes.
Okay.
And they'd walk by and I'd just be like honeydew melon, like,
bergamot.
violets, that's definitely like, acacia or hawthorn, the flowers, being able to dissect the different flower smells was always really cool. And then, like, because I had that, I'd be like, well, I'm at the flower store or, in the grocery store, I see the flowers, I might as well smell them all. I'm like, then you start picking up more and more and you're, they all go in your memory. You may not remember which type of flower, but you'll be like, well, this is floral. That's a great start with something. But there was some I couldn't get that well. Like, I remember once I couldn't get lychee, and I always would confuse it for other tropical flavors like pineapple or rose even sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of people confuse.
Yeah, so I got a bottle of it, and I drank it all one night and got kind of like a little hungover, and the next day I had that taste I couldn't get out of my mouth, right? And now I never miss lychee because I associate it with it's like if you eat a food you don't like,
or when you're sick.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So if you really want to force something on, you can do it. You can do whatever you want. You just got to self-discipline.
But I mean,
nonsense.
The good piece of advice is just start very simple and just build, and eventually it'll come. Don't read a review on a whiskey or a wine and, they got, violets or, this. And I'm like, I don't get that because I don't know particularly what that smells like. I got this, and this. It should be more. Don't fall into that. If you're listening to this, just be honest with your reviews and eventually they'll get better. I promise you. But with that, you have to experience more to know more.
Sure.
So go get different types of chocolate. Get a milk chocolate. Get a 90% chocolate. Get different conditions of almonds. Get different varieties of almonds. Start with one group. This is what I did. I went to like a online herb store and I bought everything: star anise, caraway, all these different cardamom, green and black, just so that I could start. And I just had a ton of them. Drove my wife crazy. I was in the kitchen. I would smell them every once in a while, and then that helped build the foundation. But pick. So say, well, I'm going to do fruit for a month. Try all the different fruit that you can. Leave it on the counter. Let it get a little overripe.
Yeah, good idea.
And then taste it. Taste the condition and write notes. So that's kind of my advice, because I know it's so easy to read a review. You're like, fuck, I don't get any of that.
Right.
No one's wrong. And that's the other thing about tasting and smelling. You're never wrong. It's what you're getting. Just be honest with it. If you get dandelion and someone else gets cinnamon, like, okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, that's scientifically proven, too. That you take tasting with neuroscience, right? You have all these EKGs and stuff hooked up to someone's head. We both can eat a tomato and blindly know it's a tomato. We'll call it out blind. You got your tomato. I got my tomato. But our brains are...
What if I had a tomato?
Right.
Okay.
I should have said a different fruit. Anyway, if our in our EKG patterns, they're not going to the same spot in our brain. They're going to different spots, different memories of what that tomato is that you've made. Your tomato is different than mine, but we both can say it's tomato.
Sure.
So there's no way for anyone to like really call how that's gonna work out.
Yeah, and the thing with tastings and conveying what you're tasting is, and this is big in wine, is learning to speak the same language. So if this is a staple wine that you know gives this, this, and this, if I call it cherry, plum, almond, and you call it something different, but 90% of the people are kind of on this side. So there's some times when you have to learn to speak the same language and kind of zone in to where you can communicate it. Or if you get, it's not to say that it's wrong, but eventually, especially for taking a test like this, and for doing deductive wine tastings, you'll kind of have to speak other people's languages a bit to zone in on how, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. There's a word for it. Nomenclature. I think.
Nomenclature.
Yeah,
okay. Sounds familiar.
That's any word for describing any set of things, as I believe. So you got to learn the nomenclature of car mechanics or the nomenclature of wine, or
right.
And knowing the nomenclature of wine, depending on which one of these certifications you take, you might have to learn a different form for each one of those.
Yeah, it's like you could raise a kid telling that kid that the color blue is actually red, and then all of a sudden he goes to school and everyone else is saying it's blue because everyone knows that it's blue.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of that. But that said, real quick, there are compounds, and not to get into it so much, but there are actual flavor compounds in whiskey, wine, where they actually scientifically are proven to give off a certain aroma.
Oh, sure.
Or taste.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go through them real quick. So they're called esters. That's, generally speaking, like I said, I'm not going to get too into it, but it's fruity aromatic byproducts, usually of fermentation, but also through aging and distillation. The cuts in distillation, this is going more on the spirit side, really determine how many of those get through, with the fatty acids and things like that. In wine, obviously, there's no distillation, so it's definitely different. So you're getting those esters from, obviously, the fermentation into the barrel. So those different flavor compounds will present themselves. So it's kind of, here's some that I just thought were interesting for speaking to whiskey. Lonon is warm, woody, and dry. Vanillin, obviously, usually from wood. You get vanilla. What's another fun one that you get a lot? Ethyl stringent. I'm probably pronouncing all these totally correct, but that's tobacco and fig. The lactones, comes from the aging process. Usually that's going to be your coconut. So there's a ton. You go online and look at like ester flavors. So if you're, really want to geek out on it and know why you're getting like fig and vanilla and coconut, then you can see the actual scientific compound.
Oh yeah. I actually done that quite a bit. I found it a lot of fun. You know, it's just and then you find out their chemical structure, why they're at, and then a lot of places like, Wikipedia, it's a great place to start because it's such general information, and they'll list all the plants that have it. And you'll be like, oh, I didn't know that plant had it or that plant, or, like anethol. I mean, that's like the licorice flavor compound, and that is in so many things. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, it's licorice. But it's like licorice plus, 20 other plants minimum. Same with vanillin, obviously it's in vanilla, but that's... If you were to take a oak tree and put it next to a vanilla pod, the oak tree is going to have a little more vanilla in it than the, just call them vanilla trees.
And it's so funny too, because starting out in tastings too, you'd be like, oh, there's a lot of cinnamon in this. Is there cinnamon? No, there's not cinnamon in it. So to really break down why you're getting those is because it's the same chemical compounds in both, but they present themselves through various methods. So,
do you know what the cinnamon compound is?
Oh man, I wish I had it written down so I sound extra smart.
Cinnamon aldehyde.
Oh, okay. I have spicy or cinnamon as ethyl ferulate.
Oh, fun.
So, but yeah, or 2-methylpropyl phenyl acetate is chocolate.
Okay.
That was right off. I didn't even have that written down. I had that right off my head. So let's end on me being smart and get back to you.
Right. Okay. So we were talking about the fruit, the condition of it. This fruit to me, it did smell ripe. A little, not intense overripe though. Not like super hot climate ripe where it's like jammy. I guess I would say it's when it goes to the extreme of that. It's like right there in the center. It's just a nice ripe fruit. A little duskiness maybe to it, but the definitely in the red fruit family. You know, I'm going with the route of the like tart bean cherry and the red raspberry. Red currants at the very back, probably. Not ripe on those, though. I would say those are like going the other direction. Flowers. That's the next one. Flower, herb, and other are all in the same category here. So we have vegetable, other, botrytis, oxidation, lees, MLF, malolactic fermentation. That's always an option there. That's usually pertaining to a white
wine, yeah.
Right. I mean, almost all the red wines get it, but the white wine, it's different. So here, I'm not getting a lot of floral stuff jumping out at me. You know, you could always just scratch in something like slight rose or something like that. Maybe one of the red ones. Herbs, it does a little bit, like I said, dusky earlier. That's what I usually mean by that. Like a subtle, like, you know, the real soft, like blend of the 3 herbs you get from the store, the grocery store. You know, it's like 3 herb. It's like Parmesan or not Parmesan, oregano, parsley, and thyme.
Yeah.
None of them jumping out in front of each other, kind of like all together and like subtle.
Okay.
Like not a super expensive or fresh, like dehydrated store. $5.99. Albertsons, $1 off if you have the Vom's card. But, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, after that, earth. Yes or no, organic earth or inorganic earth? I like this one.
Can you describe organic earth versus inorganic?
Organic earth usually pertains to like the way I understand it anyways, like the fresh, like forest floor, stuff like that, you know, like moss flavor, stuff that's like vibrant and more living. Inorganic earth, you're talking more like chalk, soil, like dirt, you know, granite, like all these like graphite, stuff like that. Those would be like inorganic earth notes. Still earth,
right?
Not alive,
right?
So on this, I would say not too earthy. A little bit of inorganic earth. Once again, back to the duskiness. I'd probably come in there a little bit. Maybe some small like notes of like leather, like on the saddlebag leather, like more aged and subtle, not like
not
new,
fresh leather.
Right, nothing like that. Not like a boot store. God, I like the smell for like 5 seconds when you walk in a boot store. It's like, this is nice, and then after a while, it starts
too much.
Yeah, it bogs you down, man.
Yeah.
Oak. You know, I don't smell any. I'm sure it probably seen some oak in here, so you know.
But it's probably like when you say that, you might be saying that it saw some oak, but it was maybe more neutral oak as more of a holding vessel than new oak that would impart more flavor.
Absolutely. Sure. And with wine, it's pretty drastic when there's red wine, especially. Well, white even more so, actually. But red wine, whether it's been oaked or not. And this one, because the fruit seems so ripe, it's probably New World, I'm guessing. So, you know, there's probably, if it was New World, New Oak, you would know it.
Sure.
That's a drastic smell of very particular nuances. And now we're going to structure. I guess this is where we taste it, because it's asking me the sweetness, and you can't do that with your nose. That is one of my favorite wine calls, though. It smells sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what they mean. It smells like ripe fruit, but once again, that goes to the nomenclature. Some people might...
To me, sweet, I would maybe translate it into more bright.
Yeah.
I think that's where my mind would go. Rather than sweet, I would say bright.
Yeah, or ripe.
Or ripe, yeah,
right.
Which makes more sense. But so now you're going on the palate, yeah?
Yeah. And this is red wine, so there's no way it's going to be even semi-sweet or medium sweet, or it's going to be either... It's going to be dry. Can't even... I mean, we can try it. But.
Before you go there, because we're on the nose, let's talk a little bit about glassware.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, I mean, wine has... Every style of wine has its own glassware at this point. I mean, it really... whiskey, obviously, the standard is Glencairn. But, you know, I prefer... Really, like, if it was my choice for whiskey as well, I like smaller white wine glasses. Like I really dig that style, or like Copita, almost like a sherry glass.
Okay.
I really dig that style. But Glencairns are kind of the standard for whiskey. But larger bowl, the spirit will oxidize quicker, less aroma pinpointing up to your nose. What else? The stem is huge. Whether you want the liquid inside to be warmed by your hand or not, the thickness of glass is important. So there's all these variables, and you kind of get to what you like. But that's why stems are on, glassware usually. So you see a lot of people drinking wine out of stemless
You're right.
glasses, and that unless you want, so heating up the liquid will force the ethanol, aroma more so out of the glass. So it's a little more intense. So speak a little bit on glassware and
glassware,
what you think.
like with the stemless ware. If you're at a bar and you have stemless glass wine, you're not holding your drink. It's on the table usually, so you're not warming it up. And usually wine isn't filled up to the tip anyway, so you could always grab it by the.
Whenever I drink wine, though, I always hold it with my eyebrow up, and then I swirl it.
Oh, I've seen you drink wine.
Yeah, I can never set it down.
Right.
No. Yeah.
So it just, there's a time and place for everything. I love stemless ware at home because I'm setting it on the countertop and my cat won't knock it over as easy. These are the things that
function.
But when it comes to tasting in a restaurant and this and that, you want something good, but I don't think it has to be amazing. But for to being judged in certification, I feel like you should have something decent, especially for clarity when you're making the calls on light and vibrantness and stuff. That's where I notice some glasses, of course.
So it's like a minimum, lead free, what's Riedel?
Right.
Probably your
they're
base.
Great. Yeah, that's
would you say it's
far
worth
as you
it?
Need to go.
Yeah,
is it worth it?
Because the first wine glasses I had were like an inch thick glass.
Sure.
You want something thinner so you can. Once again, I'm going to preface it with saying it's how far down this rabbit hole you want to go.
Right.
But as a base, I would say, I think if you really want to start analyzing wine or spirits, put up the money for some good glassware so you have a good base.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't need to go fucking crazy.
Yeah, and all you need is one or two.
Right.
A few maybe if you're going to line them up next to each other. The one thing that I wouldn't do is use the nice glasses for company when you're drinking. That's where they always go. They always, it's like, oh, you want to show off and you want to be like, oh, if you're having friends over for a set tasting, that's different. You're all
otherwise Dixie cups.
Yeah, absolutely. Dixie, it's a red Solo.
Red Solo and Dixie. I do Dixie cups and then just make them keep refilling it every half ounce.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets awkward. It's
with
fun.
Beer. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Right. All right. So yeah, that's a little bit on glassware. Obviously, that could, and it is going to be a whole episode eventually. It's definitely on my list, but so kind of a base for you to. So what were you on? Oh, palate. Get into palate.
Oh yeah. Is this wine sweet? It is dry as I anticipated.
How many? So everyone, here's another thing about wine too. A little bit in spirits. Well, yeah. I want a sweet wine, or I want this and that. On a percent base, how many wines do you think are sweet?
Red wines, it's less than 1%.
Right.
They're all fermented dry.
Yeah.
When people say, "Oh, this wine is too sweet," once again, they're going back to the ripeness of the fruit, which is kind of jumping in my face right now.
Sweetness or perceived sweetness is very different.
Absolutely.
Beer, it's huge.
No winemaker is going to cut their profits just to leave some sugar behind.
Yep.
For one out of every 25 to 30 guests. If they want a sweet wine, they can have the white wine. There's plenty of people that, do that out of.
Right.
It's just the way they do it, the Rieslings. All that stuff. It's great, but there is no real sweet red table wine in the commercial market in America today that I've seen.
Right.
So, but yeah, definitely dry, but fruity, way fruitier than I imagine. Like I said, the ripeness on this fruit is kind of jumping all over the place, but we'll get to that. Body, I'd say it's medium. At first it seemed medium minus, but he really wrapped around the palate a little better. So we're going to go with medium on that. Just lots of medium. Acidity. This is a good one on this wine. We're going to go medium plus with that. It keeps the mouth watering, you know, and that's a big thing. Acidity is so important in structure, and it's the one thing that people, from what I get, never mention. Even people that like wine a lot, unless they're talking about a very specific, like whites sometimes, but reds, it's rarely ever brought up. But it's such an important part of the structure.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just fruit and then or
tannins
before
acidity. No one mentions, but it's like it's super huge, especially if you're eating.
For like, pairings. It's
that's your
paramount.
Right. That you want that in your sauce to match, and if that matches, it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Now you can always build on that, of course, but as long as those two are good together, you got a piece of meat and you got a sauce, and the acid in that sauce and that wine pair well. Then it doesn't even matter if it's red or white or vice versa. Like you're gonna be better off doing that than following some red white rule. I feel like. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So alcohol, that's the next one. This is always a fun one for me. One way I always tell for alcohol is I take a sip and then I get it in and I kind of force it through the retronasal again.
Yep.
Because that's where I'll get the sting.
Very important to, speaking on taste, is to get that airflow through your mouth. That can bring out a lot of things, not only flavors, but alcohol for sure, and spirits tastings as well. You know, we'll talk when we get to the whiskey about that, you know, Kentucky chew, which is different than wine. Wine's a little more, you know,
you want
mouthwashy.
Absolutely.
Whereas, like, I think more in whiskey, you can definitely do that. It's more of a slow chew. But wine's a little different. But to incorporate air into your liquid to, you know, get it moving all around, super, super important.
Sure.
So even though it looks a little douchey to be, you know, that whole like, you know, but there's a reason why people are doing that. It's different than the reason why people smell the cork unnecessarily at a restaurant, which is complete bullshit, mostly.
Oh, guy did it in a movie once, and that was that.
Exactly. That's different than somebody, you know, incorporating air in when you're tasting wine.
Sure.
That's actually beneficial.
Do it without even thinking about it now. So when
but
you
at
do
first
that,
it is odd.
Yeah, when you do it at first, it seems odd, but after you do it for so long without thinking about it, you're not looking for somene's judgment either, because you're not, if they are like scoffing you or something, they wouldn't know.
You're doing it with Kool-Aid and whatever else.
Right. Just after my third day in Napa Valley, I realized I was doing it with my water. And I was like, it's about time to go. Like,
it's a wrap.
Yeah, that was the end of that vacation. I was swirling my water in the restaurant and swishing it and like set it down. Yeah. Drove out of there the next day. So, the alcohol. I would call this medium. Once again, now I'm not sure where the parameters on the actual percent fall in with at least with the CMS and everything. But if I had to nail this one down, I would say the ripeness of the fruit indicates like the way it was on the palate versus the nose. I was gonna say it's gonna be some not warm, but warmer than what I anticipated. So you're gonna have a little more alcohol. 12.5 to 3.5 if I was given a 1% margin.
So explain really quickly, like warmer climate usually will mean higher ABV, correct?
By and large, for
By
sure.
and large.
Yeah.
I mean, just really briefly explain why that happens.
Well, more sun, more photosynthesis works through the energy.
More sugar.
Yeah. And then the sugar is to make for the plant to get, propagation.
And then ferments. So yeah, I mean, just for people listening, like, well, why does hotter climate equal more ABV?
Sure.
That's usually the reason. More sugar ferments into higher alcohol.
And then also the cooler climate, usually the more acid.
Yep.
So once again, back to the acid, you can get that. If you really want to nail it in right, you're going to have them both balanced.
I was about to say, then it's the struggle for balance.
Right.
Life, spirits, wine.
Everything. I mean, you can have such a drastic form of a wine that's so unbalanced, or even like beer styles. Great example.
Oh, yeah.
The IPA.
IPAs, yeah.
Freaking people love them. That is a severely unbalanced beer.
100%, most of them.
But, that's what it's for. That's what it is.
Same thing in peated scotch.
Yeah.
Like, give me those phenols. Give me that, it's like, take it easy, man. Like that's why whenever I go to Isla as a style, I'm like, what else do you have? How incorporated is that peatiness, rather than give me the Octomore, just but some people are into it.
Yeah.
I got you.
I mean, in my desert island whiskey's a Lagavulin.
Oh, that was one of my questions. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, that's.
I like it a lot. I mean, I like the smoke essence more than the peat because that's smoky as hell.
Yeah.
You know? But there's also that. Once again, I found the smoke and the peatiness kind
Subtle,
of balance
too. Yeah.
each other out. It's balanced on a different level.
Sure.
You know.
I agree. I agree.
It's still like, but if you like line up a bunch of whiskeys and say which one's out of whack, you know, everyone's gonna grab that.
Yeah.
99% of it.
Right.
You know. Don't blame them.
Right. I don't.
You know. So alcohol, we're gonna go. I'd say that's medium because I'd say medium plus would be 13.5, 14.5, and high would be, you know.
So I'm writing down your guesses just because I think it's gonna be fun. Where would you put the alcohol on this? Just make a line in the sand.
Line in the sand.
Let's see how far you're off.
13.5.
13.5% ABV. Cool.
Okay, so that's the alcohol. And tannin. This one, not as much tannin. Once again, back to the oak. If there was more of that, I would say there'd be more tannin. It's lighter. It's there. It's subtle. It's
Explain tannins sensation in the mouth real quick.
It's a tactical sensation. It's not a flavor. When you're doing tannins, you're actually feeling. You're not tasting. You're not smelling. You're feeling. This is the third sensation that's not written on your paper there. And that's basically, I mean, like that covers a lot of other stuff too. Once again, the alcohol, you can feel that sometimes, especially with whiskey. That's how I always judge whiskey. Is the alcohol is like feeling. I'm using my tongue as a finger basically, and lifting the weight of the actual liquid off and like letting it roll off the sides of my mouth or off the sides of my tongue. So tannin is like a bitter, astringent kind of grinding. I always think of it as like
drying.
Yeah, like if you take a tea bag and just put it on your tongue, you know, tea bag yourself. And
that's going to be the name of this episode.
Right. You just let it sit there and you're going to feel or a walnut because they have a lot in them too.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, it actually causes your cellular membranes to constrict and hold in. It's an and it can stop blood flow. It can actually cause, if you have a cut and you were to put some tannins on there and cause it to...
Coagulant?
Yeah, coagulant, that's it.
Yeah.
So...
That wasn't written on my sheet.
I
That
know.
was right from the dome.
You did good, Cody. You did really good. But it's an interesting compound, and it's on a lot of different stuff. You get it from the oak when you burn it inside the barrel. It's in the red layer, and it gives that'll actually lend flavor because of the molecular structure dissolving in the ethanol. But the with wine, it's in the grapes. It's in the skin of the grape. It's in the seed. It's in the stem. It's in the oak, and in the wine, it's a lot. You can tell the difference between the oak and the other one.
So like, let's say a really big Napa cab, where's that tannin going to hit you?
It always gets me like in the lower lip inside in there. And like,
so that's oak tannins in the lower lip?
Yeah, I believe so. Or wait, was that grape? I forget. Anyway, but it's on the side of the mouth, especially, and the side of the tongue. That's where it really, like the back side of the tongue.
So fruit tannins is back further and oak tannins is more
those are
front?
oak. Those are talking about oak.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've like delved into it.
Oh,
so.
me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Last time I blinded a wine was with you in the cigar.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, the tannins, they're you know, with whiskey, they're usually
Huge,
especially in the bourbon. It's bourbon to me. It's just like it's kind of like sandy almost. I can
the
feel
definition. I mean, the you know the kind of identity of bourbon is oak. Anyone that says anything different just doesn't get bourbon. Whereas when you're in Scotch, you're a little more into the grain.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's just how it is.
The tannin in this, though, I'd say medium minus. It's got a little bit. It goes away quick. It goes away before the acid, you know, which I put at medium plus. It goes away before even the alcohol, I would say, or the fruitiness. All that stuff goes past where I get the tannin at.
So you're lending that to, it's not going to be a very tannic grape in nature, you know, as a base, and it's not going to have a lot of oak.
Right.
Cool.
You know,
so all this is getting you to check off different grapes.
The more tannin wine has, it is a reserving agent. It makes stuff last longer, and it's takes a long time for oxygen to break it down. So the more tannin it has, the longer aging it has. The longer aging it has, the more newer oak you want to use, which has more tannin. More tannin, more aging, more aging, more tannin.
That's going back to why a Napa Cab, you need to let it age some.
Absolutely.
And why they can age so long. And some wines, there's not a blanket statement of wine gets better with age. That's bullshit.
No, it's probably less than 1%.
Some wine gets better with age.
1% by production.
Yeah. So cool.
Absolutely. So that's tannins in a nutshell. The best I can do it.
Literally in a walnut shell.
In a walnut shell.
Yeah.
Walnuts and tea bags. Nuts. Complexity. This wine I wouldn't put at a super complex one, but because it does have the subtle amount of inorganic earth and the subtle amount of the spices I mentioned, if I call those plants, I wouldn't put it medium minus either. Once again, I'd go with medium with that. And the fact there is a scale between the fruit, the acid, and the tannin, a discernible scale where it doesn't all just drop off at once, which is what we're going to get to here. Next is called length. Length is like the staple. This is the one thing on the checklist that if you have like an A on, it cannot be a bad wine.
Sure.
If you have a wine with a good finish, it can't be bad. It might be normal.
Right.
It just you won't be able to get there. I've had a lot of wines that were not inexpensive that had a lot of intensity, flavor, balance even, but they ended fast. They kind of dropped off together within a few seconds.
Yeah, that's one of my determinations, I think, as I've tasted more for quality, whether it be in spirits, anything, is how complex and how long the finish is.
The finish is so important, especially with spirits to me. Like whiskeys, like some of the best scotches I've had, you're talking well over a minute, and you can still pull those esters and flavors out, and it's still changing and going. And you're never going to get that out of an inexpensive spirit. I mean, you might get some at
you can't fake that. You can't fake that funk. You just can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The same thing with wine, and that's I think a lot to deal with how much attention they put in the vineyard from the start to the making and everything. Because if you don't go through that with that detail, you won't get the finish that you could have had. So length is very important. We're going to give this one medium again. It could have gotten into medium plus if it would have been maybe a little more tannic to balance it out and pull them all together. Maybe more inorganic earth would drag it up there too. If it would had more leather and more tannin, and then we would have a medium plus length. Balance. Is it balanced? Is it out of balance, and why? That's the next question.
Sure. I
would say it's pretty balanced. It's not like super unbalanced. It's ripe. It's got the fruit. It's got the acid. Like I'd pretty much gone through that with the length on where we're at with that. It's not perfect, but it's not like way up here and way down there where you have like,
it's not strikingly out of balance to where you
and that's one thing with the people hate when they say the wine's too dry. Once again, they're just saying they're using tannin as a word, and they mean dry because they get that gritty feeling and their mouth gets dry because there's the cells are like, hey, we're not giving you any more juice. We can't. Whereas acid, it makes your mouth water. So
you need that balance of tannin and acid. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's like winemaking's hard.
Yeah, it really is. And, there's a lot to it, and you can make really cheap, inexpensive wine that isn't to be analyzed at all, and make just everyone, and that's more than half the people in the country are happy with that.
Yep.
So when people talk about making wine and stuff, I think of that just as much as I think of the other stuff, because that's the reality, especially from a market perspective.
Sure. Same thing with spirits. I mean, everyone is chasing these unicorn bottles all over the place when you have some great $15, whiskeys.
Absolutely.
It's just like under 20. Listen, you can find some great stuff in wine as well.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, you don't need to. I mean, there are certain styles that are always going to cost you more. And if that's your thing, you're going to be paying more.
Right.
But can you find a great $10 wine? 100%.
Absolutely. I've done it many times.
Yeah.
If I'm just going to be sitting around drinking with friends for the evening, that, there's no point in getting the nice stuff, No. There's a time and place for everything. I actually have like a whole slew of like different favorites.
Based on the occasion and time and
the value,
food, type of year,
absolutely.
Time of year. Yeah.
Time of year is big, especially here. I mean,
100%.
my alcohol consumption in the summer is so different than the winter.
Yeah.
Okay, so initial conclusion. We're getting to the end of this.
Let's do this.
Quality: poor, average, good, very good, outstanding. I would rate this wine as average plus, if that's a thing, or good. I mean, it's a good wine. It's just probably not. This is a thing. It's like quality versus
Sure.
favor. I know a lot of people that would love this. Just I could sell this. This is an easy wine to sell. I could
Right.
push this out just day and night, and people would love it. Sell it for where I work before tax, $16 a glass, easy. Yeah. And but so I'd say it's good. It's good. I'm just not a fan. Climate: cool climate, warm, moderate climate, hot. It's between cool and warm. I'd go on the warmer side. Say like when I thought of it, like when I was talking about that earlier, I was picturing like Santa Barbara, Southern California, somewhere in there, sunny but not like too hot, you know. And a lot of that, it's like, how's it facing on the hillside? Different things, different temperatures in different places, different elevations. But that's kind of where I was thinking. So I wouldn't call that a cool climate by any means, you know. So warm/moderate. We'll go with moderate. That sounds better than warm.
Okay.
Grape blend. List possible grapes and or blends based on traits. Well, we're going with Pinot Noir on this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like
So the cherry and
the subtle leather, the acid in the fruit.
do you get any cherry cola? Because that's a pretty big indicator for Pinot Noir usually for me. Not always, but
I didn't when I first tried it.
that's all. When I first had this wine, it was a long time ago. Not a long time ago, but I didn't really analyze it. So I would have to try this, but the cherry is the big stick out, and the how it's a lighter body.
Yeah, the body, the
Sure.
alcohol versus the acid in the lighter body. I mean, that's, you know, pretty, and then the color too. You know, garnet. I mean, there's a Pinot Noir called garnet.
Right.
You know, it's
Okay, so you got 13.5 Pinot Noir, moderate.
Oh yeah, where are we at? Grape blend. Yeah. Other
Region.
grape. If I had to pick other grapes that I would force it into, the other ones that usually people put with Pinot Noir, like Sangiovese or Beaujolais.
Right.
You know, it could be a Beaujolais if it was a cru. That makes sense.
But don't you think it would pick up a little more?
Carbonic maceration.
Yes.
Not if it's a cru.
No.
Most crus don't even touch that stuff.
But climate versus where you're putting this New World.
Right.
Don't you think climate?
And there would be a lot more minerality.
Sure, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
minerality.
like that inorganic earth would be like that's the one thing I love about Beaujolais is now you want to talk about inexpensive wines that are like awesome, like some of those.
I'm not a huge fan of a lot of it. It's that bubble gum.
Like, you gotta get the crus, get a good Morgan, get a good Fleury. They're just like some real like.
Maybe I haven't went deep down that, but yeah, I had like a Beaujolais Nouveau.
Yeah, no.
I know. It's yeah.
You know, not saying that we can't do that sometime. If you want to, you know,
it would be fun.
Next Thanksgiving,
right? All right. So you're.
So that's what I would say. I'm sticking with that. But the Pinot Noir origin and region, Santa Barbara, you know, somewhere on the Sideways tour or something like that. New World. I say the New World because of the condition of the fruit. That's basically like the cut between Old World style, New World style.
That and minerality,
right?
Sense of earth,
fruit versus non-fruit.
Right. So I mean, the general term, if I remember correctly, is New World style is usually a sense of an expression of fruit, and Old World is usually an expression of like the earth, right? Or like terroir.
Yeah,
it's more connected. They say. Generality is like an Old World is more connected to the sense of place. Not to say that California doesn't have a sense of terroir, right? But it's more fruit driven, rather than earth.
Even their sense of terroir is fruit driven. I mean, like
sure.
Napa Cabs is like you smell it, and that black currant and mint and the cassis just jumps in your face, and the oak. Right. You know, it's like it's super fruity, but that's also like what makes it what it is. Right. It's its essence.
And just. So we don't gloss over that either. Terroir is it's defined as a sense of place.
Yeah.
Essentially is like the terroir of this is X, Y, and Z. You know, that is the best expression of the place that it's grown, produced, whatever.
For sure. And that's when you do taste enough, you can taste where something's from.
And then pinpoint it.
Right.
Scotch, tequila, starting to be hopefully eventually, American whiskeys, that's kind of a Colorado style. It's going to be harder, but eventually I think we can get there to where, you could taste a Scotch and be like, oh, it's this style.
Sure.
So that's the sense of place.
Absolutely.
But
if you were to line up a couple Speyside and a Highlands and then throw an Auchentoshan in there, you might be able to pull it out.
right. Oh yeah,
I'd like
for sure.
So like that with the wine, the sense of place is some of those guys. When they get into that intense tasting in Burgundy, you're talking about tasting the lots and the differences between the lots
and across the street from each other, pinpointing.
Right.
I mean, it gets intense.
That's
And
that's
so,
we're not doing that.
No.
We're just
So you're saying 13.5 Pinot Noir, Santa Barbara ish. Age.
It's young. It's in the 1 to 3 year. If I had to pick it, I'd say it's a 2000 and it's 18 now. So I'm just gonna pretend it's 17 still and scribble in my checkbook. 2015.
Okay. All right. You want to leave it there?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Quality level, level aging classification.
It's pretty much it's
Yeah,
your initial
that's- yeah,
conclusion
gotcha.
and then final conclusion.
Yeah, that's it.
You want to go for it?
Well, what else are we gonna do?
Are we ready? Oh, I should. Why didn't I have a drum roll?
Drum roll. Yeah, you gotta get a sound guy.
All
or
right. It is a. It's a 2015 Oregon Pinot Noir. And so it's from Hawksview. It's in Sherwood, Oregon. So I went back there when I went home to visit my family. And it's 14. So you're real close. You guessed 13.5. So
Okay.
you're right in that range. You got the grape right. You got the year right. Region, you got a little ways off. So it's a little cooler than you thought.
Right.
Right.
The subtle differences between the two, according to the information off the Court Guild website, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They got so many similarities between they classify it as Sonoma Pinot Noir and the Oregon.
Yeah.
It's just the main difference is like the compost.
Yeah.
And this one
Didn't have that earthy,
well, I didn't pick it up as much.
Yeah.
And
it might be a style that, it's an outlier. It could be. So I just remember it was a pretty, it wasn't an expensive bottle. I can't remember, but it wasn't expensive at all. But I just thought it was a pretty good, solid.
Oh, yeah.
We went and visited, so it was a really good time. So,
like I said,
you almost nailed it. It's really close.
So close.
Should have known, man. I'm from Oregon.
And I know, right? But just for the record, that is a very qualifying pass.
100%.
Yeah.
No, I was.
We're
And I didn't want to, I'm not going to, for the sake of example, I'm not going to throw something crazy out. Pinot Noir is a pretty distinct style. California Cab. It can get real
right.
hairy, but it's not, I didn't throw some crazy shit.
It would have been funny if you did.
Yeah, I almost did.
I feel like I would have been the fact that it would have been so obscure.
Right.
I've been I don't know. I would have thrown my insecurities aside and just been what'd you give me?
Yeah. So going back to tasting, I think some good tips, we've got glassware, we've got other things. I think a good, if you really want to delve into tasting spirits, wine, whatever, a little more closely, I mean, you determine your ritual however you're comfortable with. But one key point is to be consistent with it. Don't eat different things. Try to keep it relatively consistent. Your environment, do you like it quiet? Do you like to listen to certain type of music? No strong smells, including hand soap, is huge. No perfumes, lotions. If this is, next level tasting to where you really want to start to build a foundation. White sheet of paper
some of those
for
things,
color.
when people say that, the no strong perfumes.
Yeah.
If you wear patchouli every day of your life,
You'll be used to it.
You do not want to take that off, and when you go to,
But it sucks for everyone else.
Yes. Yeah, it is. If you're in a room with other people, you're that
yeah.
person, and I don't want you to sit next to me or diagonal.
So speaking of Oregon, For everything. No, I'm just kidding. I love Oregon. I love you guys.
But right. I mean, it's just like whatever you do throughout the day, you need to continue that. Like, just don't throw, at least when you go for your test. Don't try to do something different on your test that you did on your study days.
Yeah.
If you study, like you said, be consistent.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've seen a lot of people. They go to step up to bat and they try to use a different bat that they practiced with. It's not how baseball works.
Yeah, and it's definitely depending on like how far you want to take it. Let's talk real quickly about like palate fatigue, particularly with nosing. Your olfactory system's just gonna get shot after a while. I do have some coffee beans here, so that's a good way. I think it's pretty standard to kind of reset. The trick that I use is I smell my sleeve of my clothes, because my clothes, I'm used to the detergent and it's something familiar. Some people smell like the crook of their arm or their skin. That's kind of, that's just kind of been my thing to reset, is basically coming back to ground level, however, whatever that is for you. But just be careful if you're tasting or smelling a lot of spirits, like you're going to get fatigued. How do you combat that?
Palate fatigue is a real thing. I get it very easily. There's only one way I know to combat it, and that's
just keep doing it.
Yeah, it's just like any other thing, like exercise, muscle. If you're out of shape, then it's gonna take you a while to get back in. But once you're in, you're good, and you can keep working on that.
Sure.
When I do these certifications that involve blind tastings, I don't approach it like a uniformed. I need to learn how to taste everything in the world. It's more like I call it my UFC approach.
Okay.
So I like focus on that. When these guys train, they're not training to fight anybody. They're training for a fight.
Sure.
You're training for that fighter. So you're training in this manner.
So you're honing the specific skills to make you more.
So if you're going to do a whiskey tasting, there's a certification, then you need to taste a lot of whiskey up to that moment. Really dial it in and focus. To me, I don't even have the reset thing. I don't smell my arm or anything. To me, it's a lot. The biggest thing is focus and concentration, and staying on that mind thought, not letting your mind flutter elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like earlier with the Pinot Noir with me, I didn't even think of Oregon. If I would have thought of that, it would have been in there. But because I wasn't focused and didn't have that on thought standing there, it just never entered.
I'm not going to fault you, man. You're all right.
But that's how it goes. So if you're tasting, whatever it is, I would suggest that you really focus on that while you're on that, and then do that. Move along.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Let's taste this first one. So this is what do we got? It's the High West Distillery. Their Midwinter Nights dram. This is Act 2.7C 1900. So basically, just real quick on this one, it's 49.3% non-chill filtered. Blend of straight rye whiskeys finished in French oak and port barrels. So we have that wine finish as well as French oak. The blend is secret, but the whiskeys, High West, like I got to give it to them. Park City, Utah, they are really upfront about where they're sourcing their whiskeys. So this is 2 of the whiskeys in the blender from MGP, and 1 is from Barton Distillery. So just to kind of get into that, MGP, real quick, is Midwest Grain Property or Products of Indiana. Founded in 1847, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, owned by Seagram's, then Pernod. Pernod sold it to, I forget, LDI, Lawrenceburg Distilleries. So it went through all these changes, but the main thing is that their main purpose is to sell for private labeling. So they have over 50 brands that source from MGP right now. Their biggest customer is Diageo. But those listening that love their whiskey, and it is good whiskey, you may recognize some of these names, including High West. But we have Angel's Envy, Bullet Rye, George Dickel Rye, Redemption, Smooth Ambler, Templeton, as well as many others.
Yeah, a lot of great whiskeys.
That's all coming from Indiana, where they specialize in rye. They also make neutral grain spirit for Seagram's gin and vodka too. But High West was for me the flagship of honesty and sourcing and blending and barrel finishings. They didn't try to hide anything. They didn't try to tell me it was Al Capone's recipe.
Right.
You know, they were like, this is what we're doing. Is it good or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. If you like it, you like it.
Yeah.
It's like, thank you for being honest.
Sure.
You know, you can make great whiskey and still be honest. And then their other blend in this one is from Barton, which is it's a lower rye. It's 80% rye, 10% corn, and that's from Barton Distillery in Kentucky, owned by Sazerac. So they do 1792 as well. Yeah, so it's fun. It's a barrel finished rye. We'll get into it a little bit.
Nice.
So right away on the nose, you can tell you're not in an ordinary whiskey category.
No.
It has, I mean, it's definitely that alcohol burn up front.
Right. I think we both took a
Too big a whiff.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about, since we're talking about tasting, you know, start lower and kind of work your way up to your nose with the glass. Mm-hmm. And then just kind of, this is all my style too. But yeah, I took too big. Don't just jam your nose down into the Glencairn. You're just going to burn your...
Especially if it's sitting for a while. You know, when you swirl it, the air mixes with the vapors that are sitting. But if you have the vapors just resting, you can get a bigger hit. The chamber's full, you know.
For me on this, it definitely has that spicy nose. The alcohol is definitely there because we're nearing, 50% ABV. But there's a lot of mint that I get off of this. What are you kind of getting in the way of like what the French oak imparts and that port in particular? You can definitely tell it's finished.
Right. Yeah, whenever I get the whiskeys with the port smell or the port finish, it's almost like that like candied smell, like slight notes to it, you know.
Okay.
Like the reminds me of those the smell of the bowl of the candy at your grandma's house when you go to grab a piece and they're all stuck together and it's like the ribbon candy that like you know what
that
I'm saying?
No one wants to eat.
Yeah, well that's why they all melted together.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
But I like that smell. So
Yeah.
like whenever I get that one, I got that with a lot of the port finishes I get.
Yeah, this has it definitely has a lot of citrus on the palate too, but it has a certain astringency as well. That's a little more drying. I mean, attributing that to the rye whiskey. So with tasting, I would recommend tasting something, giving two tastes. Also smell with your mouth open, try both ways and see, but you're going to amplify those aromas by getting air going through your mouth as well. Don't care what you look like when you taste. Some people are like self-conscious that they're swirling so with my whiskey, I like to kind of do an initial, coating of my mouth as a first taste, and then really kind of slow chew it. Keep it in your mouth as long as you can. Swallow it and then let some air go through and really start to pick up those flavors. What's your kind of process for spirits?
When I do spirits, I do the nose outside of the glass,
Mm-hmm.
breathe through the mouth, breathe through the nose separately, and then together. Like nose, mouth, tag team.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it's like good amount when I usually taste.
Yeah.
If there's a lot, I'm always spitting, so I tend to take a larger amount sometimes.
Sure.
At the very beginning when I start, I'll take a sip and rinse, to kind of get the like wake up cells, because they freak out when you douse them with toxic chemicals. And so once I got that process all set and done, then I'll take a good sip, and I move it around all the different parts of my mouth. I try to get it in, without the air, not like with the wine. It's more like a swish.
Coating.
Yeah, coating. Mm-hmm. I'm letting the tannins hit everything, because then I can evaluate that later, And at the same time, I'm paying attention to like the very back of my throat. I can actually like relax a little and let some just kind of slide down, and that hits the retronasal while it's still in my mouth, and then After a little bit more of that, then I'll either spit or swallow, at which point I immediately start to think about, that's when I gauge the alcohol.
Right.
Because that's when it really comes in. It's really hitting that retronasal at this point because I got the air back in the mouth. And, you know, it's like, is it fiery? Is it, you know, mellowing? Is it smoothing out? Is it getting hotter? You know, like when it gets hotter, I notice that's usually like lesser quality stuff. If it actually seems like the heat's going up after you got rid of it.
Yeah, 100%. You know? And that's really on the finish too. You get to determine how integrated the spirit is, alcohol. But yeah, for this, now that I've tried it on the palate too, there's I get a lot of almond and like cocoa too. But it still has this like herbal kind of like minty flavor too. But it's like a lot of like cocoa.
That's funny you say that because like I didn't get the mint so much on the nose until I tasted it, and it was like, wow, that's a lot. It was kind of like, you know,
but it's
you know.
this is it, I mean it's pretty well integrated. I mean a lot of times barrel finishes, you know, they just either aren't done correctly or they're done in a smaller barrel, or it's just, you know, they don't leave it in long enough to like really mingle properly.
Right.
But I think like
When you say that, do you mean it tastes like they're separated almost?
Yes.
Yes. Got it.
yeah, and that's my biggest determination of poorer quality when it comes to spirits, wine, whatever. And it translates into food as well. I mean, how integrated are these flavors as one, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
It's like a difference between a sandwich and then having a slice of meat, slice of this, slice of that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that could be a lot of different, and it is a lot of different elements: alcohol, you know, acidity, tannins, you know, the mash bill.
Absolutely.
I mean, everything determines. That's why this is so hard. That's why the good ones are good, is because they've determined how to make that balance happen. So
For sure. And I think that's one thing with their confidence in disclosing their sources is because when you know you have a good product, you can do that. And I don't understand why the rhetoric against the Indiana products would even be considered less in the very beginning, just because it's a non-recognized area, or you know.
I just think sourcing got a bad name, blending got a bad name because it was like, you know, you didn't make it, it's not as good. I have no problem with sourcing and blending if you're upfront and you're not trying to lie about it.
Right. But I don't even understand why they lie about it. It's almost like the insecurity of it is worse than the actual persecution of it, to me anyway.
Well, it's like, you know, you fix up a car, you buy it brand new, and then you sell it like you were the one that restored it. Maybe you have more pride in saying that you built it from ground up rather than you were just smart enough to sell it very well.
Sure.
There's some brands that don't give a shit and they just sell a ton of source whiskey and they don't care that people know. There's some people that really try to hide it and deny it.
Which one have tried to hide it and got caught? Can we say that?
I try not to bash a whole bunch.
Okay, never mind. About it.
But I did read their name.
Okay.
So it was one of those that I read.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been told a lot of things about, you know, sourcing, but you know, we're also coming from like a spirits background that goes further than whiskeys, in that, you know, cognac is the master of the blend. So you can appreciate, and I mean, there's a lot to be said where who's really the master of the product, the distiller or the blender?
Oh, for sure.
There's an art to both. One maybe will have more science, but there's an art to both, and the blender should get just as much credit.
Well, like with look at beer. I mean, the entire industry. Who malts their own beer? Like, no one. No one malts their own beer.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there, but pretty much you just buy the plants from someone that knows what they're doing with that plant. And like, you look at tequila. Who grows their own plants? Herradura. Anyone? That's the only one I know.
Yeah,
I know there's some more, but like,
they source. They have relationships with farmers, and you know.
Why wouldn't you want to? I mean, especially here in the States, like, oh, you're helping a farmer, like, you evil man. You know, like, those farmers work their asses off in that part of the country. I've been there. I know it. I've seen them. Those farms are not, a rye farm is not an easy job.
No.
You know, so
no, and I think like just be honest and like make good juice. Like, people will be receptive of a product that's built on like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. If you don't like what's in the glass, that's cool. There's a lot of different whiskeys out there. But if you like what we're doing, and, you know, I just think long term, those are going to be the brands that stay around because you can't tear them down for being dishonest.
Right.
And of course, there's some people that, you know, have sourced in these big brands, you know, are 90% of the people going to know that Bullet Rye was from Indiana? No. You know, the majority of people drinking Bullet Rye, which is great rye, aren't going to know that. But does it matter? Not really.
No.
It's good whiskey.
Right.
You know, and, you know, Bullet's not going to lie either on that part. They, you know, there's some stuff in there. But at the end of the day, like, it's sourced and it's good. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But this one also, like, just to note on the color, I mean, it definitely has, like, you know, whiskey's going to pick up that red, but I think just seeing it, the next one in particular looks a little more, has that red haze to it, a little more than a normal whiskey. But let's talk about watering down spirits a little bit. It's kind of a frowned upon thing. Everyone thinks they need cask strength and,
Sure.
you know, all this. So obviously, watering down whiskey, the more ethanol, so the more alcohol, the more they surround the fruity esters and trap them. So trapping those, it's about the water releasing them. I think the greatest analogy that I've ever heard, and being from Oregon, I can relate, is think of walking outside and then it rains and then you smell after a rain, how that water opens up aromas. You smell
sure.
the
Right.
cement, the earth, the, you know, the grass,
Everything.
Yeah. So it kind of releases those bonds. I guess the negative would be really in Scotch, where it kind of brings out the sulfur components, I guess. So there's a little more controversy, I guess, in doing it with Scotch of certain kinds, because it'll take down the phenolic, the smoky, peaty stuff, and it'll kind of raise the rubbery kind of smell. So it depends, but, you know, it's said 35% if you for alcohol, you really start to open up all those flavors. So experiment with, there's different calculators online where you can say, well, my spirit is this ABV, I put an ounce in my glass, how many milliliters of water do I need to put in to bring it down to 35? Just try tasting your spirits at different proofs and write notes for each one. Try it at cask strength, try it at 40%, try it at 35%, and see if different things come out. It's a really fun experiment.
Oh, yeah. And different things will come out.
Yeah.
It's a guarantee.
Yeah, I'm going to do a whole episode on proofing down spirits and take a really high cask strength, like a George T. Stagg that I have that's like 70%, and then just, you know, do 7 and just break it all down and see what we're getting.
Yeah. You know, it'd be interesting is to give someone like two blinds of 4, and they're just 2 whiskeys diluted in 4 different measures. You know, and just see how the notes open up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know? Let's taste the other one that we got. So this is also High West. This is the Yippee-Ki-Yay Batch 3, 46%. Again, it's their it's a blend of rye whiskeys. It's basically their finished double rye release in vermouth and Syrah barrels. So we have a fortified wine and we have Syrah. So
where's the Syrah from?
I don't know. They didn't say. Yeah. On the cover, it's a historical poster. I forget the name of it, but it's at the Buffalo Bill Center in Cody, Wyoming. This was first aged in new charred American white oak, finished in French oak barrels that previously held vermouth and Syrah. So yeah, it's another kind of, you know, transitioning from the wine and where whiskey can benefit from wine finishes.
Oh, I see what you did there now. Now I get it. Welcome to the party, Jake.
It's all coming together.
Right.
It's all coming together.
I do like those, though. A lot of them, you know. I mean, most of the people that take their time, if they're going to buy these barrels, which are not cheap or free, from a different country, you know, you're talking shipping wood, not free, they're going to put some good juice in it usually. I've noticed. I barely ever have the finishes where they're like, oh, what is this? What you know.
So for me, this is much more floral. It's still that same base. I mean, definitely on the palate, it's very different. Take another sip. Definitely more. It's more tannic, more astringent, right off the bat. Has a little bit of separate smoothness, also though. More acidity. Definitely more tannic. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
more aggressive.
It feels heavier bodied,
Yeah.
but it's less alcohol.
Yep.
And usually that's how I can get. I mean, if it wasn't, it burns less. The vapors aren't there, so like it's funny. You can tell that with that 3% subtle difference, but nonetheless, on the palate, it almost feels like it's got something thicker in there. You know, like some not added, but like maybe more denser molecular, vanillin or something.
Sure.
It just feels more coating, or like sugar almost.
Yeah, it's definitely more gripping. I mean, that goes back to that tannic feeling.
Yeah, it could just be that.
It's not bad though. I mean, it's better. Honestly, this is better than the first time I had it. The first time I had it, I wasn't a huge fan. I thought it felt separate. You know, it wasn't well integrated to me. A little too harsh. But now it's not too bad. It's definitely not my favorite offering from High West, but it's fun.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's what they're about. They're like, we had some barrels, let's age some stuff.
Yeah,
and let's go for it.
They clearly weren't that concerned with the poster. I mean, it's very.
You don't dig the.
I mean, to say
the yippee-ki-yay. They should have had the Die Hard. They should have had Bruce Willis.
Yes. Crawling through the air ducts.
Yeah.
Just his face real big right there.
Yeah, that would have actually been better.
Underneath it saying no royalties were paid for this.
Yeah,
it'd be great.
Yeah, they don't give a shit.
But it
how do you like
High
these?
West, the cowboy. I like this. It's fun, like you said, and it's like it's
interesting.
It's oily almost to the viscosity to me, and I find that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about it I find offensive.
Yeah.
If I went into a bar and asked for whiskey on the rocks and they gave me this, I'd probably get another one.
Yeah.
They're
definitely doing really, really cool stuff, fun stuff. And that just goes to show, like, wine gets a bad rap for being stuffy. Whiskey, lately, with this resurgence of whiskey, it tends to get this like stuffy feel as well, but it's fun, man. Wine can be fun. There's rock and roll wine out there, man. There's people like having a blast with branding and being innovative. Same thing with whiskey. Listen, man, they're down in Kentucky drinking it out of the bottle, out of solo cups. Like there's no rules to whiskey. That's the big thing. And wine. As much as people want to talk shit, yes, there is, a fine dining element to it, and that's great. But it doesn't have to be like that. If that's not your thing, there's still wine out there for you. Trust me. So
that's just the market niche. That's where it's at.
Yeah.
If you who else are you gonna sell a $3,000 bottle of wine to?
Exactly. There's, like you said, time and place. There's something for everybody.
For sure.
You just got to find it. But if you could share a glass of whiskey with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be?
That is a really good question. It's gonna have to be someone dead, obviously, because the live people we could work that out.
You think you could meet up with Bruce Willis?
Not him.
Okay,
that's way too soft. I mean, like you're saying, anyone ever?
Anyone ever,
dude? Like, there's been some pretty incredible people throughout time and history that have made a lot of big changes.
But that you'd think that you'd want to talk to and share a glass.
I just get one glass of whiskey.
Yeah.
And just me and the one person in the room, no one else.
That's
it. Let's see here.
I think I know who you're going to pick. I'm going to write it down.
No, okay. I don't think you're going to get this one because it is way off. Like, we're talking like, well, go ahead. Because if I'm going to have the time to...
I would guess that you'd pick Einstein.
Oh, man, I wish I would have thought of that.
Yeah.
I was going to say like Jesus or something.
Okay.
Well, see, if I did that.
Talk about carpentry?
Well, a lot of questions I got, But the thing
there's a few that are.
There's a lot of Christian sects that think alcohol is not allowed. And if I could be like, well, I did have whiskey with the guy.
Turns water into water.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and then if I did have some water here, like this purified drinking water from Kroger,
what's next to it? Come on. Come on, we got Avion over there.
Well, you know,
I'm not that cheap.
we could do both of them and then blind the
water.
Is the Kroger going to be better than the Avion?
Talk about a boring episode. We're going to break down water. Although I've been to a water seminar and it was absolutely fascinating and awesome.
There you go.
But anyway,
nonetheless,
okay.
I'm going to take your pick. We're going to do.
Why? Who else were you thinking?
You know, other civil leaders, Gandhi maybe.
Okay. Like you think he'd be in for some whiskey?
That's another thing. Like, you know,
you also have to say
These
there's
are
a glass of whiskey, not just talk to anyone. Like who would be, you know?
Well, if I watch them struggle through it, that might be fun.
Might be fun.
Yeah. You know. When like
I agree.
You went all that time without food, and this is what gets you to shiver. You know.
All right. So you're punk. You like a little bit of punk rock.
Yeah, that's all I listen to.
Really. Are you ready for a punk rock quiz?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
You know, I would have whiskey with Sid Vicious or something like that, but I don't see that ending well for either one. Oh, G.G. Allen. Okay. There would be an interesting glass of whiskey.
Yeah.
I could watch him cut himself up afterwards. You know, like,
see now you're getting
or
it.
during. You know,
Or
like,
during. All right. He was the lead singer of the Germs before his death in 1980.
Oh, got me. I have no idea.
I went way back.
Yeah,
I went deep
like,
cuts for punk.
Ooh, that is a great question.
Darby Crash. Who is polystyrene?
No idea.
Oh, really? This is different punk than, you know. All right. Not putting you on the spot. I'm not going to take this out.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, you're good.
She was the lead vocalist of the X-Ray Specs.
No idea.
Before you're okay.
You know, a lot of the people I don't know
I know.
the history and stuff. I read a book once. It was a great book.
Yeah, and in a book you mean nothing.
No, I did read a book. It was
it's one of my favorite things. Like I read that in a book somewhere, and by a book I mean nothing.
The book was called Please Kill Me, and they did a movie called CBGBs, and that pretty much was.
I was going to ask you a question about that.
Okay, go for it.
No, I took it off because I thought it'd be too easy, and these are
if you wanted to like fail me, you're doing great.
Joey Ramone, frontman of the Ramones. You know, that's pretty a given. Was diagnosed with what mental illness?
God, I don't even know that one.
Really?
No. What was it?
OCD.
Oh, that's what do I call it? A mental illness.
I'm Stranded was a single released by which band? Oh man, you are doing amazing. The Saints. I picked them because I'm a Saints
who?
fan. The Saints.
Okay.
You're not going to know this one either. I'm hoping you get 1 for 5. Amoeba is a song by which punk rock band?
Nice. That's Adolescence.
Got one.
Yes.
Oh, where's my ding 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 sound?
You know what would have been funny is if you would have just gave me like an intro song without asking me, and then that would have been the song.
That would have been it.
Like, that'd have been good. That was on the soundtrack of SLC Punk. It was a great movie.
That was with Matthew Lillard.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably, one of his better performances.
His only performance? No, I'm just
no,
kidding. Scooby-Doo was great.
Scream.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting a little woozy here. That.
Oh, yeah.
That face where the vein was popping out.
That was a good scene.
Yeah, like.
I'm surprised he got passed up for an Oscar on that one.
Dude, these things are rigged, know. Totally not fair.
Yeah. So this question is borrowed from a podcast called Your Mom's House with Tom Segura and his wife, Christina P. Would you rather have to run everywhere you went or shout every time you spoke?
Run.
Really? Just like a maniac?
Just everywhere.
Like,
no,
yeah.
We're good.
You just...
I mean...
Okay.
You
don't think you'd look like a psychopath?
I know I would. Well, I'm not going to sound like one.
Like the doctor's ready to see you and you just fucking bolt down the...
Okay!
That would be so much better.
No. I'll be in great shape.
You didn't even have to think about it. You need to run.
I was a runner in high school. I did the track and the cross country. When you run cross country, you run a lot. You get used to it.
All right. So if you punched yourself and you cried, would that make you strong or weak?
I'm going to say weak.
Yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
But you made yourself cry, so technically you were strong.
Strong people don't make people cry necessarily. I don't think that's
the
constituent for having strength.
Okay. But physically, you were strong because
right.
you made yourself cry. What gets you out of Jake? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Depends on the morning. It's a lot of different things. It depends on which bed I wake up in and, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a thing.
All right, let's bring it back to whiskey. That's what are some of your favorite food pairings for either whiskey or wine? just that you found interesting? You have a lot of interesting stuff.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Let's start with whiskey first. Scotches, single malts in particular, the real rich stuff, real rich viscous things like chocolates, Scotch and chocolate can go a long way. I feel like anything with the whiskey, you need to have something that, is going to balance that palate scrubbing that alcohol is going to give you. So it's going to be chocolate, rich cheeses, there's certain, like the, goat cheeses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I put, certain blue cheeses with on a cracker or something like that. I'd throw that in there. With bourbon, just because of the nostalgia of the times I've had with it and where I've experienced it at, I could put that next to barbecue just out of sheer, like, go USA, like, we're good here, and like...
It works.
Yeah, and barbecue is... usually have smoke hints to it. The sauce is nice and thick and heavy, so you got that coating feeling again.
Well, so
anything light is just gonna that alcohol is gonna
overpower.
Yeah, and like force it out.
Well, what was your favorite? You went to Camp Runamuck, which is in Kentucky. It's a week-long whiskey camp. You went last year. What was your favorite distillery that you visited?
Oh, it was Wild Turkey for sure.
Yeah,
that's like without
a little biased.
Yeah,
so Jake was in the Wild Turkey cabin.
They were our sponsor. Okay, so that had a big influencing factor.
And you made turkey dew a thing, which is huge.
I didn't do any of that. That was a byproduct of.
But it is a thing now. So Mountain Dew. Well, Mountain Dew was originally a bourbon mixer.
Yeah.
But now Turkey Dew, which is Mountain Dew and Wild Turkey, is definitely a thing.
Done.
So, what do you like about Wild Turkey?
They were.
Did you meet Jimmy and Eddie?
Oh yeah,
and Bruce.
Yeah, that was the thing. Is like it's been it's a piece of American history, and to have when we went to their distillery, to visit them, they welcomed us all in. They had the big tables. There's 150 of us or so, and the 8 of us, they immediately just pulled us aside. Yeah, they're like, "You guys come with us."
You got the special treatment.
Sure, and then it was Bruce and Eddie that were just showing us some stuff, and then Jimmy came up and talked, and then after that it was lunchtime, and once again they're like, everyone's gonna go eat in the mess hall over there, but you guys are gonna come with us. And the three of them,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the 3 of them took us to their rick house, and they showed us their barrel,
their honey barrel,
their personal favorite barrels.
Yeah.
So like it started with Jimmy. And then
where was the location? Do you remember? Like high up?
It's scaled. I believe it's scaled down. I want to say.
Okay.
And then it was like, this one's good, but
yeah, they all have their different styles.
It's like pretty hot and stuff. It's good. I still like it. And then like the next one was like,
so you tried it out of the barrel?
Yeah.
With
them.
So
there's like the 8 of us, and then it's the 3 of them, and we're just kicking it.
Dude, I had the opportunity to get Wild Turkey right out of the barrel from Jimmy in the rick house. There's nothing like it.
Yeah,
priceless
awesome.
moment.
Right,
but,
exactly.
So you got to get the special treatment in the rick house.
Yeah. Well, after that, it was the son, and then the other son, and it was just like freaking Goldilocks and the 3 bears. Like, this one's too hard. This was, and then like the third one was just right, rye heavy. And it was just awesome. And then we had lunch and just hung out, and like we were riding in the back of the pickup truck, going from spot to spot.
Yeah.
It was just really awesome and nostalgic, and
really good memory.
Right. And it's hard. How are you going to compete with that? I mean, it's not fair to the other distilleries.
That's true.
They didn't stand a chance with that.
After that.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's Runamuck's a special thing for sure. Kentucky itself, man, there's just something about being down there. It's beautiful too. Like I grew up in Oregon, so I was used to trees, and I just never pictured Kentucky for like rolling hills, but Wild Turkey is set on some of like the most picturesque, landscape. Right. Huge bridge in the back, the rolling, hills with a bunch of trees. It's awesome, man. For people listening, where in Vegas do you think people should check out if they come here? Bars, restaurants? I mean, I know a lot of people listen. They're like, "Hey, I'm coming to Vegas and so. Where do you suggest?" I mean,
that's such a
wide open.
Right.
What about bars? Let's go bars to drink whiskey, and then beer, and then a wine.
Oh, fun. Okay, whiskey. I would have to say one of the spots that always pops into my head real big is the Oak and Ivy downtown in Container Park.
Yeah.
They got a pretty good list there.
American whiskey centric.
Absolutely. Yep. And, we're here and stuff. I mean, there's other
great
places.
Cocktails, great bartenders, knowledgeable staff. I mean, if you have any questions about American whiskey,
Yeah, absolutely. So that's like, that's that for sure for whiskey.
Cool.
Beer, there's a couple spots, depends on what you're, there's a couple spots in town.
You better say Atomic.
I was getting to that.
All right. Go ahead.
What's Atomic? The Atomic Liquors downtown does have a great beer program there. They're in the kitchen next door is too.
How are the bartenders?
They work.
All right.
They do their job. They're great. They're all awesome. It's a lot of fun. It's a very industry centric.
A lot of history.
A lot of history there.
Yeah.
They have a freaking packaging license still with the serving license.
Yeah.
So you got the growler machine. You can take the stuff to go if you like something. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And they have bombers. That's one thing I love about that bar is because their selection of like 750s of beer is just huge.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. Even like the most draft centric places will always drop, or they won't carry it right. I know that there's a bar off Sahara that they have like a lot of draft beer, but the bomber thing, it's like they tried and then they scaled back.
Sure.
They got all these empty coolers.
Yeah.
And that's sad. I like to see when it's always something new there. Like Tacos and Beer was the other place I was going to mention because that place.
Great place, yeah.
Yeah, their drafts are always changing and they always have a very like mathematically centered in diverse stylage. A couple IPAs, a couple sours, a couple strong ales, a barley wine, some pilsners, brown ales. I mean, they do really good at diversifying.
The food's so good, man. I'm just glad I don't live closer to Tacos and Beer, dude. It'd be bad news.
I'm
so good.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of money there.
Yeah.
But their bomber selection, it's good. They got some of a cooler full, but that's about it.
Right.
Just like if a few more of those would be awesome. But I'm not picking them apart for that. I think it's great. So those are the two places I'd say for beer. For wine, that's a doozy.
You're going to have to go to the Strip, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be places all over town that's great. But when I studied wine for years in this city, and I never went to places to drink it. It was always buying from the store because you're doing the blinds, and it's hard.
Yeah.
There was the spot that would
I would say Carnavino.
Carnavino's good.
Steakhouse. And then, off strip, Sparrow and Wolf has like fun, like unique. They don't have a huge selection, but they do some really fun, unique stuff. So if you're looking for like something off the beaten path, that's pretty fun. Does Duforney still have a plate? Like I haven't heard much about them over in Summerlin.
Oh, no
idea.
idea.
But if you're in Vegas, I heard their wine selection's still pretty good. I don't drink much wine out either, but pretty much any of the steakhouses are going to kill it.
Yeah, if you're talking about by the bottle, there's just so many places. But if you're talking about like a good glass program that's inexpensive, worth it, consistent, I have no idea. That's a great question. I had some spots in town that when I was studying with certain friends that we would go to because we knew the bartenders and they would just blind us like 5 or 6 wines, charge us for one glass.
Yeah.
And that would be great. But those places all closed now. They've been replaced by something else. So, if you're wanting to go around and learn and taste wine blindly, my biggest suggestion is find a place that has a good by the glass program where they're not going
or group.
The group's the best way.
Find a tasting group, man. So you all decide on a style. Usually is what happens. Everyone brings a bagged up blind wine, and you all kind of go through it. Just practice, repetition.
Right before I did my Court of Master Level 2, I had a group, and we were so well dialed in that what we would do is meet every week at the same time, and then one person would handle the whole group for that 1 week. So one time we did it once every 6 weeks. You had to spend like $150 on wine, and
but
but it's also you had leftovers. So
which is always fun.
Yeah,
but that's the price of learning wine, is it can get pretty damn expensive, but that's with everything.
Absolutely. If you buy 1 bottle a week, it's the same thing as buying 6 bottles in 6 weeks. So,
correct.
Right. Yeah,
correct.
Mine is, and then not only that, you can do whatever you want. If you want to do a region, like that's what I did. Grab just do Bordeaux.
Just really delve in. One of my biggest suggestions, if you're looking to get into wine, but same thing with spirits, is you can go on Google Earth and go to the winery. You know, it could be in France, wherever. It's still going to be on Google Earth, and like take a virtual tour kind of around the place. You know how you can like look around the streets and drink your wine and like picture yourself there, because it helps you connect the liquid to the place. That's just like a little trick that like I used to do when I was trying to really grasp where this wine came from. But you can do it with spirits as well. I mean, you're tasting an Islay Scotch, and you're looking at, you know, the waters and the rocky, you know, beaches, you know, the shores, and you see that aggressiveness but that haunting, you know, finesse too. So you get a sense of like the liquid. So I think it's just any way you can to connect will help you learn more.
And that's just fun. I mean, geography is fun, and landscapes are huge. I mean, people build entire art galleries out of pictures of them. There's one on Mandalay Bay, you know? So like when you're doing that, it's not like you're looking at boring stuff. You get to see like super awesome like beaches and cliffs and all that. You know, Scotland, you could probably get a few screensavers for your desktop background at the end of the day, at the very least.
100%.
You know.
Do you have any kind of final words, advice for somebody that just wants to step up their tasting chops, you know, whether it be blind or whatnot, whether it be some books or, you know, just advice that you've learned that you want to pass on?
Taste blind as much as you can. That's the fastest way that I've been able to learn, is by making yourself guess. And then you also get less, you get more confident about guessing.
Right.
The more, you know, gets to the point where you don't care if you're right or wrong. You just want to know, you know? Yeah. So, taste blind as much as you can and focus. I mean, I know it sounds like a weird, like, umbrella term to use, but focus and concentration to me is like the biggest thing, because there's only one right answer, and it's there. It's in your glass. Yeah. You know, and there is 100% chance that you can get it if you want to, but you got to really pull it out, you know, and you got to pull up that checklist and have the list in your head of what it is, and you mark down the line. You know, you mark off until you get it. It's just focus and concentration is, you know, all those other rules can fall underneath that one as far as I'm concerned. But that's it. Taste blind, focus.
Cool. Awesome, man. It was a blast. So thank you so much for being here. And come to Las Vegas and just scream Jake Davenport, and he'll give you a drink. I'm not going to tell you where.
You're good. But let's keep it that way.
Probably at a skate park near you.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for joining us for the Whiskey Talkin' Podcast. If you dig the show, please share it with your friends and family that might also enjoy it. Follow the show on Facebook, Whiskey Talkin' Podcast. Also on Instagram and Twitter under the name Whiskey Talkin' PC. The website's whiskeytalk.in. Feel free to contact me with thoughts, show ideas, whiskey suggestions, or anything your whiskey heart desires. Thank you again, and remember,
if it got out of hand, it was the whiskey talking.